The Chicago Fire are building a brand new stadium. The American women put 4 on Jamaica. And what do we want college soccer to be? That and more on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show, The Sound of France. Peck and power means just one thing. You've found your way to Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's game from the world's favorite country. We'll see. Coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Thank you for joining us here in the middle of your week. How you feeling, Mr. Davis?
Ready to go. Ready to get into this. There's some really good stuff here on this episode of the show. We get a little bit of like real world, what's going on with our national teams and what's happening in sort of like the professional pockets. And then we get to talk about the way American soccer is structured in other ways. It's going to be interesting.
If you're watching this now and you haven't hit subscribe yet, do so now. Every subscription helps, and it costs you absolutely nothing. If you want to take your support up a notch, $3.99, become a member here on YouTube. Join the MK Ultras and help this show grow and become what we ultimately want it to be. Outside of YouTube, you can go to coffee.com/morningkickaround and support us with a one-time donation or set your contribution level wherever you want. And thank you, Big Ron Patel, contributed to the coffee last night. Thank you so much, sir. Jumping on the MK Ultra wagon here. If you want to follow us along on social media at MKickaround, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, you can write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We got to reply to some of those notes in there, but really appreciate a note that goes beyond just a comment that comes up on YouTube. And then also, we have a podcast. We are a podcast. Search Morning Kickaround on your favorite podcast platform. And a special note that Spotify also shows the video version if you pull that up on your app. So it's kind of a combo podcast and video service there on Spotify. All right, you ready to kick some long balls with me?
Let's go. Let's do this.
Wednesday's long balls here on Morning Kickaround. All right, long ball number 1 here on Wednesday, June 4th, with the Gold Cup and a full summer slate of games to come. Players are dropping like flies. There was already a lot of contention about who was not on this roster, and we've lost a few more, Jason.
Yeah, not ideal, right? I think enthusiasm for this Gold Cup dropped significantly when we found out that Christian Pulisic was like, nah, I don't want to come. Can you guys just let me play golf for the summer or whatever? And then, we already knew that Weston McKennie wasn't going to be there and Tim Weah wasn't going to be there and Giovanni Reina wasn't going to be there. And now we are in a moment where we've lost Valerie Balogun to injury. What it does mean is that the Philadelphia Union is even more heavily represented in this team than they were to begin with, because the guys that have come in to replace those injured players have Philadelphia Union history. Nathan Harriel is one of those players. Who am I missing? The other one. There's another. You don't have it in front of you, Rob? You don't have the roster? You don't have
I'll pull it up in a second here. I was
Okay.
looking at the list of people who had left, but
well,
fault in my work here.
Yeah, again, it kind of speaks to, and sorry for the lack of information, it's just not coming to my head, but it speaks to the issue of this roster and this moment a year away from the World Cup, like a year. Now, we are very much an in-the-moment society, and some people might not even know the World Cup's happening until it's flopping around on their face. Oh, the World Cup is here. Oh, that's what's going to happen for a lot of people in this country. But there is obviously a lot of very hardcore, dedicated U.S. men's national team fans who are keenly aware the World Cup is coming and would like our U.S. men's national team to be ready. What is the thing that the Boy Scouts always say? Ron, I don't know if you were a Boy Scout. What is the thing the Boy Scouts say?
Always be prepared.
Be prepared, right? Are we prepared? I don't know if Mauricio Pochettino was whatever the Argentine version of the Boy Scouts is, or maybe it's Boy Scouts. Could be international. I don't know. I don't know if he's got that, and I'm sure he wants to be prepared. What we know he's prepared to do is to go on other shows and talk about the U.S. men's national team. He went on the what's it called? Unfiltered? Is that what it's called with Landon and Tim Howard? And he went on there and he reiterated the messaging that I think U.S. soccer is very keen to get out there of, which is that this is not a vacation. When you come to represent the U.S. men's national team, this is an opportunity to play for your country. It is a privilege. You have to show up. You have to work hard. That this is not a take it for granted kind of situation, right? Now, he also said that Christian Pulisic is sort of like the U.S. Messi, and that we should sort of be thinking about that in that way. Here's the quote: "The people need to prioritize the national team. We were talking about Argentine players or Brazilian players or English players or Spanish players. They are desperate. Even Messi, even Neymar, even Mbappe for France. These guys are desperate to go to the national team. For them, when they go, they don't see if it's a friendly game, if it's an official game, if it's a World Cup. It doesn't matter because the possibility to defend one more time your flag, your shirt, it's about to feel proud, and that is the responsibility to us to translate." And I wonder if he's doing a good job of that. And I wonder if Christian Pulisic sends that message by begging off duty this summer, Rob, because that was part of my issue.
Well, I mean, it is pretty damning when people throw that's a lot of weight to throw at someone. Messi always makes his games. Why can't you? But I'm sure if Messi had a hip injury, as they are saying, that is the main reason for Christian to miss this summer's action is because of the hip. I mean, at the end of the day, it is an individual to individual game, right? Not everyone's situation is the same. You can't be covering everyone in the same cloth. If he's going to like ruin his hip by playing a bunch of games this summer, then it is what it is. But you don't want your leader to be missing a game. Like he's not in a wheelchair, so it's not as obvious that he needs to miss. So it's just like the visibility of the injury doesn't do him any favors. Because what Messi in the Copa America, when his ankle was the size of a basketball, it's like, oh, he can miss some games. Clearly his ankle's that way, but it's hard to see a hip. But it doesn't send the great message as far as participation with all those optics. But at the end of the day, optics are very temporary. And what did you say? You don't really notice what's going on with the game. A lot of people in the United States until the World Cup is flopping in their face, you said?
Yeah, like a fish on top of their faces. That's a thing people say all the time, right? Like I didn't know it was happening until there was a fish flopping in my face. No, I'm obviously being a little facetious, but yeah, I don't want. I guess my concern again is like everybody else. When the national team hits the field in the World Cup next year, will we be saying, okay, they're ready and they look good and they look like they want to put on a show and win games and drive interest in the sport in this country, in addition to just going as far as they can because we care about them as our team? Or are we going to look back and say, wow, what a bunch of wasted opportunities. What a bunch of time we didn't take advantage of. Look at how bad they are. Should have done more back in June of 2025. That's all.
Well, now, especially with Balogun, most notable of the recent departures from the squad. So where are the goals going to come from in this list? I mean, Ajamin, White, Downs, and Wright.
Yeah, I mean, Damian Downs is an unknown quantity at the national team level. He's an exciting player playing in the second Bundesliga. I'll leave it to you to decide how excited you should be about Damian Downs. Then you've got Ajamin, who showed us something back in that January camp, Rob. But that was a January camp. We kind of know what the level is in that competition or in those friendlies, and he has not gone on a tear in Major League Soccer since then. He scored a couple of goals, but he has not been prolific for Charlotte. No. And then you mentioned Brian White. Brian White has been prolific for Vancouver, but he's 29 years old, and I think there is still reason to be doubtful that he's going to be a difference maker. Now, I want to address something from our chat. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to our members. Nate's in there. He's a member.
Yeah, Daniel's saying, good morning.
Daniel's saying, if the USA fails to win the Gold Cup, is this the end for Poach? Absolutely not. No chance. Now, if they finish 8th, I guess maybe that's a different question, Rob. Like if they somehow don't get out of the group or something, then that's maybe a different question. But if they just fail to win, no. They'll justify it. It's a learning experience. It's an experimental side. We've got to give Poach time to figure this out. He didn't have Pulisic. He didn't have McKennie. He didn't have Weah. He didn't have Reina. He didn't have Balogun. He didn't have Pepe. He didn't have Jedi Robinson. And that those are excuses for how this might go. But I do think we should be holding them to a standard of show us something. That's your job, Pochettino. Hagas tu trabajo. Like, do your job.
But at the same point, when we were watching, we'll come to the women in a little bit, but I mean, how much of a lead in did Emma Hayes have to the Olympics? And she had some more at her disposal, but she was able to turn around and put in a winning performance. This is definitely a thrown together squad built in. That's probably why there's less enthusiasm, built in excuses for Poch and the team with the absences and whatnot. It's not put the junk on the line is not going to happen this Gold Cup, but here's the Gold Cup. If we don't get out of the group or the United States doesn't get out of the group, they start off against Trinidad and Tobago, then take out Saudi Arabia, and then take on Haiti. And any coach in the world that cannot get out of that group probably doesn't deserve a job, even if it's the C or the D team.
No, that's fair. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. That group screams, get out of the group. And then we'll start to wonder when we see the knockout phase of the tournament. And again, are you going to get a final against Mexico, that kind of thing? And then that will be something we can judge his work against with this group who, and this does become an exercise in find the guys who are going to maybe surprise everybody and make a roster next year. Find the depth, find those players. If you are worried about commitment from certain groups, certain guys, if you have issues in certain areas of the field, okay, let's see it. Let's see what you can give us.
Before the Gold Cup starts, there is 2 friendlies on the 7th of June against Turkey and then on the 10th against Switzerland. So next week, men's national team action is upon us. Moving on to our second long ball here on Wednesday, June 4th, the morning after a 4-0 win for the United States women's national team. Emma Hayes has, she's still in experimentation mode with no major tournament, but last night versus Jamaica in St. Louis, not a big crowd, but there was an entertaining performance on the field.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time that Emma Hayes has to mess around a little bit, to work on the squad, to build towards a World Cup. And I saw a friend of mine, Jason Anderson, who writes for Black and Red United and does some stuff on the women's game, was saying, there is an alternate reality. There's a what-if scenario where imagine if Vlatko Ananovsky had this period that Emma Hayes is getting ahead of the World Cup that he went to in Australia, New Zealand, because he didn't get it because what happened, Rob? COVID happened. And it ruined all. Sorry to jump in. I didn't know if you were going to get there. COVID happened.
I was thinking that because I remember it was almost like a drop-down menu of all the things that kind of worked against him. But right. Yeah, COVID a big one. Yes, obviously.
Right, but that
he couldn't call anyone in, so he was relying on the old players and couldn't transition.
Exactly. That whole thing of getting a chance to sort of low stakes bring in a bunch of players that you have not seen before. Right, getting Loel Lobanta into the team is not a luxury that Vlatko Ananovsky had. He couldn't risk. I got a window. I don't have any windows before the World Cup, and I lost a bunch of time and all these things. And it not to say that Vlatko would have done so much better at the World Cup if he had that time. But this is where it is, and this is what we're witnessing. And when the United States goes and crushes Jamaica 4-0, what we can say is that's great. And you saw some talented players show up and do some things, and good on Ali Sentinor scoring twice. That first goal in particular was well crafted and well taken. Very nice. And Lynn Biondolo, formerly Lynn Williams, scoring twice. And we always like it when Lynn Biondolo scores. So and again, you got to see Catarina Macario do her thing.
She looks solid.
She looks good, right? We haven't had that moment yet where Catarina Macario got a chance to lead the line for the U.S. women's national team. And it looks like that's happening right now. And there, obviously there are some big missing names here, that you would be going, oh, I wonder what their role is going to be. I mean, I mean, Mallory Pugh comes to mind, Mallory Swanson, excuse me, comes to mind first and foremost. But we don't know what her status is, right? She's going to have a baby. This is what the women's national team brings you, and I think for the most part, Emma Hayes is navigating it well.
Yeah, I also was really impressed with Alyssa Thompson. Very exciting player. I just kind of comparisons like Raheem Sterling a little bit last night, just like dashing down the wing, super aggressive and direct, but also kind of some heavy touches, big touches, but had the speed to kind of make up for it. And every time she got in some space on or off the ball, she was very willing runner and kind of seemed to be able to use her speed in a useful way. Not all young players don't always know how to use their speed in the proper way to beat their player, and she certainly does, and certainly had the upper hand against the competition in Jamaica last night. But good things are happening in the, what would you say, like the incubator phase for this team?
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, the incubator phase. I like that. And again, a number of players getting. We have a midfielder, a teenage midfielder starting in Lily Johannes. Like we're seeing these things kind of emerge that are going to change the complexion of this team. Shout out to John here, who wants to say Carrie Amello getting her debut there at left back. That's another, again, debuts, players who aren't capped or have very few caps getting a chance to show what they can do.
The United States women's national team returned to action, more friendlies at the end of June. They'll face off against Ireland twice and then Canada at the on July 2nd. So that could be an interesting friendly matchup there. But that window now done for the United States women's national team. Moving on to long ball number 3 today. Some former United States men's national team players getting into the coaching realm. Most notably, it was announced that Benny Feilhaber, new coach of the Oakland Roots there in USL Championship.
Yeah, big news for Benny. Interesting that he's getting this opportunity in the USL Championship. I don't know. I don't know enough about the ins and outs to know how fair the situation was there for Gavin Glinton, who is the guy that got fired. Oakland's been looking for their guy. They've had coaches they've liked leave the club when maybe they weren't expecting that to happen. So that has kind of maybe slowed down the development of an identity with this team. Go back to Juan Guerra, who left with Noah Delgado before Gavin Glinton, who took over last year, and now Gavin Glinton gone after his run as the permanent manager. But Benny Feilhaber has wanted to be a head coach for a while, and he went from doing, he retired as a player. He was doing some podcasting. He was doing some media stuff. And then he decided, no, I want to be a coach. And with his connections in Kansas City, having played there, they gave him the job of the head coach of their MLS Next Pro team, which I don't know if they were, I think he started maybe before MLS Next Pro got off the ground. I'm trying to remember the timeline here. I remember talking to him on the radio about this. He was working with Ike Opara, who he's very close to. And, that was a developmental job. That wasn't, hey, go win games, as much as it was help our reserves and our young players get ready to be starting professionals, right? Make them into better players. And that is fine for a while when you're getting your feet wet and you're learning the ropes. But he wanted to be a head coach. And when Peter Vermees was fired earlier this season in Major League Soccer, Benny Feilhaber wanted the job. He was actively angling for that job. Now, they just put Kerry Zavagnin, who had been Peter Vermees' second, his top assistant, into the role for now. And I don't know what the search looks like. But I think Benny Feilhaber going to Oakland indicates that he's not on their short list. That they were not seriously considering Benny Feilhaber. So, and, there's a couple of things that are at work here, which is one of them is the previous generation of players, like players fairly recently retired, making their way into the coaching ranks, influencing the game on that level, becoming people we can identify as maybe the next wave, right? And you mentioned before the show, Michael Bradley, who had been an assistant with his dad in Norway before Bob was fired, and is now taking a job as an assistant with Jesse Marsh with the Canadian national team, which is, by the way, I mean,
let's just like pause on that for a moment, that there's like an American coaching insurgency in Canada. That's like the satellite American coaching staff.
Yeah, it's I don't think this is the right way to think about it, but it is interesting that one of the best American midfielders of all time is going to go off and try to make Canada better, going into a Gold Cup with an American head coach. Jesse didn't have a national team career, so you can't really say that he's turned his back on the national team. You could say maybe, oh, he's American. Why is he coaching Canada? But with Michael Bradley, it's a little.
He tried. In fairness to him, he tried to be the American coach, and they didn't give him the job. So
Jesse
it's
Marsh,
well within his rights for Jesse Marsh to move on. But my eyebrows went a little higher when I saw the Michael Bradley to the Canada coaching.
Well, he wants, again, these guys want to coach, and they're going to take jobs where they can get them. And again, I think this is a fascinating step for Benny, because being a coach of a reserve team is one thing. Being an assistant coach is one thing. Like, you have to be good to be an assistant coach, but when it's your name that is responsible for the wins and losses, when people look at you when the club isn't playing well, when it's you who picks the team that starts, and you've got players who are upset because they're not in the starting lineup, and you've got to deal with them, and the buck stops on your desk, to use every cliche possible, Rob, it changes the dynamic. Like, it changes the mentality. And I think that's an interesting part of this.
Who would be the next candidate to be the mystery defector to go to the Canadian national team?
Oh, we want to imagine Americans turning their back on the U.S. and going to Canada? No, Rob.
I guess that's a lead in for who are the most spurned Americans.
Why don't you just imagine one of the G.I. Joe team joining Cobra? What are you doing right now? Like, suddenly Optimus Prime is the Decepticon. What are you talking about, Rob? I don't understand.
We do live in mysterious times, Jason. We do live in mysterious times.
This is obviously, by the way, a major part of this. Bradley did play in Toronto, says CBG Objects. There is the guys who have played in Toronto have an affinity. The Americans have an affinity for Toronto. Like, I think they like it. Josie Altidore likes Toronto. Michael Bradley likes Toronto. These guys like Toronto. Jason Hernandez. I think, this is like kind of he's become a little Canadian, Michael Bradley. And I don't know. Should I be mad at him about that? I don't know.
We could almost do a segment of Memory Hole of like when the American soccer consciousness held him in such a sweet regard. It's like went from sweet to sour, the relationship there, but for a number of reasons. And it's wild that he was the leading light, so to speak, for the American player abroad for quite some time. And I think maybe that's gone down the memory hole just a touch in like kind of the broader thinking.
Oh, absolutely. I think there are a lot of people who associate Michael Bradley with Cuva, and that's it. And they don't get past that. And that's unfair to Michael Bradley in the career that he had for the U.S. men's national team.
But you could pile on to that. I remember during the height of the Save the Crew movement, there was the playoff series between Columbus and Toronto that he said something like, well, the fans should have been showing up anyway, or something kind of detracting against the Save the Crew movement. I remember that kind of maybe soured the memory there too. But circling back to Benny Feilhaber, he joins the Oakland Roots in the USL Championship in a temporary home with a record of 3 wins, 1 draw, 7 losses. That's a tough situation to kind of jump into as one of your big first jobs. Do you think that he's going to get his feet to the fire, turn it around here? Do we know anything about his prowess?
No, I mean, we're going to find out. Like, this is the next step, right? I mean, he wouldn't be getting the job if they were in a good spot. So he's got some work in front of him, and it's his first head coaching job. It doesn't mean that his career is going to be turned sour because of what happens next, but it is taking a risk, which is why I respect it, right? I have no idea if this is the right choice. I have no idea. We're going to see what he brings to the table.
Well, good thing he got in there before he'd have to be in a relegation scrap in a couple of years taking that job, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point. Would he have taken the job if Oakland was being threatened with relegation? That'd be tough.
If you're watching this now and you haven't hit subscribe, the little button just under the screen there on YouTube, why don't you go ahead and do so now? It would be awesome. And then tell a few friends, or if you've already subscribed, put it in your chats. Tell them all about Morning Kick Around. Let's make those subscriber numbers go up. And as those numbers go up, more things become available on YouTube and the show can grow. You can also take it up a notch, become a member for just $3.99. You can get early access to videos. You can get bonus content, priority commenting on screen during the program, and access to the Discord. That Discord, whole bunch of threads, general commentary, internationals, European stuff, local stuff, lots of conversations ongoing at the Morning Kick Around Discord. You can find us on the social medias at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also reach out via email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Outside of the YouTube world, you can support us on coffee.com/morningkickaround. You can select your contribution amount. It doesn't have to be the $3.99 that the YouTube membership is. You can contribute at any level that you'd want, one time or regularly occurring. Thank you to everyone who's done that already. And thank you to those who may do so here now. And then also, one more thing. We're a podcast. Search Morning Kick Around on your favorite podcast platform. And extra note, it's on Spotify too as a video.
Yeah, do that. Make sure. I mean, if you just like set it off, let it play, whatever. Just go do something with Spotify. That'll help out the show. That's how we're going to get more money coming in, which gives us more opportunity to expand the show. The guests, we want to bring better and bigger guests. We're working on some things there. I would also say that if you are a member and you're not in the Discord, what are you doing? And if you don't have access because you don't have the link, because Discord links expire after a certain time and the old one might not work, let me know. I will post again for members on the YouTube channel the Discord link so you guys can be jumped in and be part of the conversation. I mean, there's stuff from the top of the game all the way down to the local game that's going on over there in the Discord, and that's a great reason to become a member of Morning Kick Around. Is it doesn't cost much. We're working on the bonus content for you here on the channel, and you get access to the Discord and the community and all those things. So yeah, I mean, no reason not to, in my mind.
Yeah, I really enjoying the Discord, especially being able to talk about the Champions League game at the weekend, as well as my local Oakland County stuff from top to bottom. This show kind of addressing it all from an American perspective.
Yeah, what I love about that is like, and I talk about this a lot, like American soccer, you kind of have this idea, you box it in. It's MLS, it's USL, definitely it's Oakland County and all that stuff. But American soccer is sort of just the way we view the game from our position of America as Americans. And that includes watching the Champions League, which had no American involvement, and seeing it through a prism of, okay, what does this mean for how people think about PSG, or whether or not, how people are sort of gathering in certain places. Because one thing that is fascinating about American soccer is that it is so wide ranging. The spectrum of interaction with the game that we have here in this country, I think, rivals anything in the world.
No doubt at all. So with all that said, do all the things, and then you can get on all these conversations and help this conversation grow. We want to be like one of the centers, one of the town squares of the American soccer conversation. All right, I think we're ready for our next segment. Let's move right along today's hot topic here on Morning Kick Around. The hottest of hot topics here on Wednesday's Morning Kick Around. I'm Robert. He's Jason. The opening graphic couldn't be more on the nose. The Chicago Fire came out with some hot news yesterday, announcing a privately funded stadium in a location right next to downtown. And crazy to think they've had 3 or 4 homes now, and somehow building a brand new stadium is the right way to go.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, let's all. I mean, look, this is a moment, sort of politically, and even in soccer, where maybe we don't always want to give credit to the wealthy people. you know,
Yeah, it does seem
uh,
against the grain. I was saying we got to pull something about this. Seems too good to be true.
but at the same time, like if this is really a thing, yeah, I mean, all credit to Joe Mansueto. And again, you have to kind of take it at face value that this is going to be what he says it's going to be, which is a privately funded soccer stadium. Like that's a major part of this, right? Because we are in this thing where owners are oftentimes leveraging the possibility of leaving town or demanding public subsidies for stadium building. And all of that is icky when we're talking about people who are worth what? Billions of dollars, Rob. Like it's like you got a billion and you don't have a couple hundred mil to throw at this thing, or you can't raise it, or you can't find somebody to loan you the cash. Like, come on, what are we talking about, guy? Like,
Yeah, that's something that's not talked about that much, is like the fundraising ability that these people have is unreal. Even if they don't go in their own coffers, it doesn't have to be the tax coffer, right? Like they have the connections and have like $1,000 plate fundraising dinner or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Mansueto puts out this statement that they're going to build this stadium. The plan is to have it open in 2028, if I remember correctly. And a
Yep.
couple things that are remarkable about this for me. One of them is just the way this thing looks in this sketch. Okay, it's just a sketch. It's not even like a rendering. There's no 3D people walking around. There's no guy on a cell phone with a dog. There aren't families that you can identify. It's little dots. This is the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, Rob. This is gorgeous. This is amazing. I like those stadiums, those buildings behind the stadium don't even have detail. And I'm salivating over what this looks like. If it looks even a little bit like this, it is going to be an absolute gem right there on the Chicago River. You're the Chicago geography expert. The location is the other thing, Rob. This is like about as good as it gets location wide. It's unless you're talking about maybe Portland, maybe Seattle, but that's a football stadium, maybe Atlanta, but that's a football stadium. Like this would be one of the best placed soccer stadiums in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is less a rendering and more of an architect's sketch is what it looks like. And yes, salivating just the roof all the way around, the size, and just the details that are presented there are really, really, really pretty. But yeah, this location, I mean, to get in an underdeveloped or undeveloped plot of land big enough for a stadium to be downtown adjacent, like kind of in a place where everything meets there in the Southwest loop. And so that would be, there's trains, buses, highways, main just thoroughfares, all in that area. That it, from just at a glance, it looks like an idyllic situation. There was a lot of talk in there's multiple different plans and proposals for a place more north in Lincoln Yards that was just west of like Lincoln Park. But this is just like the southwest corner of kind of just the loop area, like downtown adjacent, but really just at a glance looks like an amazing place to plant this. And it would be perhaps, if it looks like this when it's built, a crown jewel of American soccer.
Yeah, and that's you said if, right? If is doing a lot of work. We have seen this story before, that a stadium gets conceived, there's a plan to finance it, they maybe even identify the land, perhaps even acquire the land. We get renderings and they're like gorgeous, and there's a roof all the way around, and there's all these amenities and things about it, and maybe even fits into a neighborhood like this. And then what do we get? We get something that approximates that idea, but it's not, or either maybe the plan falls apart completely, which has happened in the past, or we get something that is not quite what we were promised. And maybe beggars can't be choosers when it comes to American soccer, Rob. Maybe, I mean, despite the fact that American soccer has now built something like 24, 25, 26 stadiums, maybe we need to be a little bit less greedy because, well, we should never take a stadium of any kind for granted, especially soccer in this country. But as I've always said, soccer teams and the Fire have been around since 98, right? So we don't expect them to go anywhere. They kind of become the furniture, but they've never really felt permanent the way this stadium can make them feel permanent. And I even mean that when they were in Bridgeview, because while that was a soccer specific stadium built for the Fire, built by the Fire for the Fire, I guess, although ownership was always kind of one of those wonky public partnership things. It was out there. It wasn't in it, as much as Chicago's this big area. Chicagoland is a big area. You take something away from sort of the beating heart of the city, the loop and all that stuff, and you move it that far out. People go, oh, whatever. That's the minor league soccer team. They play out there in Bridgeview. They're the Bridgeview Fire. They're not the Chicago Fire. Chicago teams, they play much closer. I mean, or their history goes back so far that you can't say they're not Chicago. So I mean, this is, to me, this is the next step for the Fire. They need to play better soccer and make the playoffs and get people excited. But the other part of this, though, I think is worth mentioning, is the capacity is supposed to be 22,000. And the way that sketch looks, doesn't look like there's much room for expansion. You put a roof on it, you block it in that way, this is supposed to be the anchor of a new development in that area. You might not be able to expand. 22,000 seems pretty small if you really catch fire, no pun intended, in Chicago.
Yeah. I wouldn't, to your point of if doing a lot of work, Chicago is one of those cities where construction is a whole world unbeknownst to, or unto itself. And who knows what roadblocks they're going to have to
navigate.
What
do you say, Rob? What are you saying?
There's going to be some roadblocks along the way that they're going to have to traverse.
You mean you're saying there might be some people involved in construction who require a little extra lubrication? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
I'm suggesting that there might be unforeseen complications in the process, which, I mean, there's a lot of people involved. It's a big city, all that stuff. But it's curious that soccer culture or in Chicago was kind of a bit of a microcosm of the fractured nature of soccer in the whole country, because there is a huge Latin population who watches only Liga MX. There's a pocket of people who are specifically for Fire. And then there's all the rest of, suburbanites that have to traverse their way across, large amounts of space to get to any of these places, whether it be Bridgeview, Soldier Field, or this one. And it'll be interesting to see if it was telling in the Mansueto comment that was the headline was, this is going to be a stadium for all cultures. I think he, in that the quote, he recognizes the fact that it is so fractured, and hopefully all those things can marry, because I know a lot of suburbanites didn't want to come to the city, and then a lot of those crowds were kind of separate people in a way. And then you'd see such sparse crowds at Chicago Fire games, but then any sort of international Gold Cups and stuff like that, and they could fill Soldier Field no problem. So there is a huge soccer audience. Will this be the thing that funnels it all into one outlet for the Chicago area? It would be great. Chicago seems like and New York are two. You think that they're just like a powder keg ready to explode for these clubs, but it hasn't happened yet. I hope it happens for them, because they should be one of the top teams in the country, but very rarely have hit those heights.
Yeah, I mean, there's a degree of difficulty here that makes me, a little bit hesitant to just kind of jump up and down and suggest that this is going to be the thing that fixes the Fire or turns them into some sort of phenomenon in Chicago. I don't want to go that far, because there's so many hoops that they have to jump through. But I do think you can be excited, right? You can be enthusiastic, and what we ask, billionaire or not, what we ask of our club owners is to be ambitious, to show faith that their money will be well spent. And it's tough to spend other people's money. It really is. But in this case, this is exactly what we want. So how can we look at, how can we be too precious about this and start to undermine it before it's even off the ground, if Mansueto, who has shown a tendency to spend to fix the fire. Like, it's not like he hasn't gotten the recipe right, but he's been willing to do that, Rob. And I think that this is, again, what more could you ask for if you're a Fire fan? What more could you ask for if you're an American soccer fan who thinks that the success of the Chicago Fire is important to the success of Major League Soccer, which is important to the growth of the game in this country, which gets us to where we want to be one day.
And kudos again. I'll double up on the Mansueto positivity. Yeah, he's been burned. He's spent a lot of money on rebrands, moving the team back to Soldier Field, big money on players and coaching staffs that didn't work out. He has already spent, and the fact that he hasn't gotten gun shy and then pulled, the money out of it and just like, all right, I'm just going to run this thing as, minimally as possible. He's doubling down, which is wild. And it's a little bit, and it's also encouraging just in general, like that there's someone willing to be that persistent to chase the American soccer, peak.
Yes. And I would say that the other thing about Mansueto and this news is this wasn't, I'm sure some people around Chicago knew that this was a possibility and we're aware of the rumblings and things. And you mentioned Lincoln Yards, and that didn't come together, but we kind of knew that things were percolating there, and maybe the Fire were interested in that spot. And then there was a USL team that was supposed to come into the market and maybe launch in something in that spot, which obviously didn't go anywhere. And again, this all kind of speaks to soccer is a real estate play. And even this story kind of feels like soccer is a real estate play. It's not like Joe Mansueto is only going to build a soccer stadium and say, all right, I'm done. He's going to go, how else can we benefit from this? How can I benefit? How can my companies benefit? Things like that. But this did kind of come out of the blue on some level. Like it isn't like we had this whole buildup, like, oh, they might be buying this spot. They might secure this for a soccer. It just kind of like, boom, the letter drops. And then we're all like, oh my God, what's happening? And then with the rendering, oh my God, the sketch. This is a letter you were talking about that he wrote. And he's a Chicago guy. He is interested in turning this team into success to the glory of Chicago. And because he has the money to burn, again, what else could you ask for? Now, I do think that this will put further focus on those places in America that have yet to figure out how to build a soccer stadium. And as I think it was, who was it? Somewhere up in the chat, somebody said Columbus, Chicago, building their second stadiums. Obviously, Columbus already built their second stadium. Chicago now could very soon, by 2028, have their second soccer-specific stadium. And yet, up there in New England, they have yet to get one of those buildings done. Like, they haven't yet built a soccer-specific stadium. And I think you could, if you want to be really pedantic and weird about it, you could say, well, Seattle is still not a perfect scenario. Playing on artificial turf in a football stadium, even if they get 30,000, it's not their building, and that's not exactly ideal. And, I don't know that Atlanta's ever going to move because of the shared ownership, but I don't know that, wouldn't it be so much better? And they wouldn't be able to put 70,000 in it probably if they were to build a soccer stadium. But imagine if they had a 50,000 seat soccer stadium in Atlanta just for the team. And I'm a person who, like, from a civic responsibility perspective, be like, that's kind of a waste. You don't want to do that. Build $1 billion stadium for 17 home games and then try to fill up other dates and concerts. It gets real. Again, it gets into that place of like, are we being efficient with our money? But man, as a soccer fan, my mind goes wild.
My two American cities that I have an affinity for and spend time and have family in, Detroit and Chicago. Exciting times, I got to say, on the soccer front, both putting their cards on the table for potentially the biggest landmark or footprint for soccer specifically, especially club soccer in these states. So exciting time on my perspective. But we got a comment from Matt, the Flint Bucks fan. Funny, whenever I see the stadium render or sketch, I expect the stadium to end up looking nothing like it and expect none of the surrounding development to happen. And that comes from being burned. Like the major sports teams in Detroit, just one story of many, especially Little Caesars Arena, where the Red Wings and the Pistons play. They just got forgiven by the state hundreds of millions of dollars that was going to build low-income housing, like in the area adjacent to Little Caesars Arena. Like, let's just build the stadium first, and then we'll get to those developments. And then 5 years later, oh, don't worry about that. So definitely
Yeah,
Watch out for the fine print on that stuff.
that's the thing. And it's worth mentioning, Andrew saying the White Sox wanted the same spot, but they wanted taxpayer money. And so when the Fire came in and said, we'll do it privately, that was the reason that the Fire could beat out the White Sox to that spot. And I do know there are people, Chicago people, who are White Sox fans and Fire fans who are a little conflicted right now because this might not be good for the Chicago White Sox. I mentioned the Revs, who have yet to build a stadium. I will, since we're doing the rendering thing. This is the only rendering I could find for the Everett Stadium that is at least conceived, or there's a concept of building this stadium there. I believe this is on the Mystic River, north of Boston. It's not exactly central. It's by no means the same sort of location as the Fire are looking at. But man, at this point with the Revs, just get something. Just build a goddamn stadium already. Like, I want to just get it done. I mean, pay whatever mobster you have to pay to get that thing constructed.
I mean, how fast did they pop up like the temporary stadium that they're playing in Miami? And what's the kind of the footprint? Surely there's something they can throw up like that.
Yeah, that's a location thing. But if you're not paying rent on the building because it's shared ownership with the Patriots, there's no reason to go put together a temporary stadium. The reason that Inter Miami built that stadium on the former site of Lockhart in Fort Lauderdale, they tore down a soccer stadium to build a soccer stadium. Let's not forget that. Lockhart was not the proper venue, but they had the location because they tore down I remember driving by that stadium before Inter Miami landed, and the grass was 8 feet tall, right? It looked like
I've seen those Pablo Maurer photos.
Well, and David Beckham did an announcement there when they were intending to take over the site and build their stadium, and you could see that it was, dilapidated and not being used. I don't think there's a spot within the immediate environs of Boston that makes sense that way. So the Revs just have to get this Everett thing across the line. The politics are tough in Boston, but in that area, but they got to get it across the line.
To put a bow on it, exciting times. Chicago Fire, a privately funded stadium coming to the city of Chicago. If you're watching this and if you haven't subscribed, thank you, Alex, super sticker, and everyone that's in here, feel free, stickers, thank yous, memberships, all that. But you can start by hitting subscribe. Subscriber numbers mean a whole lot. Memberships, the next level beyond that. If you want to do something outside of YouTube, you can go to coffee.com/morning kickaround if you want to do a one-time or a repeating one. The other way to get a hold of us is on social media. Excuse me. At Morning Kickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Email morningkickaround@gmail.com. We are a podcast as well, so search for Morning Kickaround on your favorite podcast platform, and feel free to utilize Spotify as they have a fun video feature there. All right, we're going to come right back with our final segment of the day, Culture Wars, coming up here on Morning Kickaround. Culture Wars here on Morning Kickaround. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Today, what do we want college soccer to be?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big question out there, but the powers that be seem to finally be recognizing that the current college system is not working. And the youth soccer, in large part, is directed towards sending kids to soccer. So it's a big monolith and a unique part of the American soccer structure. But ultimately, as soccer becomes a whole different thing here in this country, club landscape completely changing. What do we want college soccer to be? What role are they to play in this kind of future of soccer that's happening?
Yeah, we're talking about this because Chris Kessel over on X, and then you can see his post, his post with this. He says he was given, somebody slipped him. I imagine it was in a brown envelope, and they met in the diner, and they were just drinking black coffee. I don't know if that's how it happened.
In Chicago, too.
In Chicago. Yeah, Chris Kessel got the proposal that U.S. Soccer has put together for a partnership / professionalization model for NCAA soccer. And then you and I have talked about college soccer a little bit, right? And I, as much as I may not engage directly with college soccer in terms of watching games or knowing the players or the teams, I appreciate the place and the role it has in American soccer history. Without college soccer, there's no Brian McBride, there's no Clint Dempsey, there's no Eric Winalda, go down the list, right? College soccer was the way for these guys to play after high school and get themselves to a position where they can become professionals. But the game has been left behind a little bit. This version of the game has been left behind because of academies, MLS academies, USL academies, taking players away from the college game. The rules of the college game are odd. This becomes, it really is just about sort of getting the scholarship. There's a lot of foreign players now in college soccer, and this has become a talking point. So let's look at this proposal that Chris got and see what it says and maybe figure out if we think this is the direction for college soccer. So this is the first slide with a summary. A partnership between college soccer and U.S. soccer can create a transformative experience for athletes and fans, enhancing participation and relevance during a critical moment. It says they support long-term growth and sustainability of college soccer. Now, look, this is the thing, Rob. Like, if you're U.S. soccer and you don't have any control over college soccer, and your job is to build the game, give players opportunities to develop, find ways for people to interact with a high level of the sport, maybe even use that to, as sort of a jumping off point for national teamers. Obviously, in the women's game, college soccer still plays a major role. Why wouldn't you want to try to get your hands on that? Like, do we think this is from a position of, are they doing this for the right reasons? I guess is part of this.
Well, if we look at some of the later slides, there's definitely one of the major key points of this presentation was if we take this in-house, we can make 2 times the revenue. So I think that's part of it. But also, I think that development needs to be addressed. I mean, we've talked about in many different ways, fandom and leagues and the way the youth landscape is, it's one of those fractures. So if the youth game is developing players, or it traditionally did, was to send players to college, like, you play rec, you play on the travel team, and you do good on the travel team, you get a college scholarship. That's like the traditional kind of like hope and dream of a soccer parent, right? But, if they're going to be developing professional players, we've learned that the college system is not always that practical for that. Playing a condensed 3-month schedule is very difficult. So, stretching this out, this big part of the proposal the part that I like is the stretching out the games over a longer period of time. So even if you play 4 years of college soccer and you're coming out the other end, a little bit older than other new pros, you've at least spread that out and you might be at least more developed because I've talked to lots of college soccer coaches. They basically all of their training is in preseason, and then the rest of their actual season is games.
Games on top of games 2 days apart, a day apart sometimes. Yeah, that is it's a function of obviously the way that college soccer is funded. It's also a function of the costs involved, all those things. Yeah, the breakdown of the college year and all that stuff. It's important to point out, as Angus said in the chat, shout out to Angus, who's a member, become a member, be like Angus, that college sports in general are changing because of name and likeness stuff, because of the way players now make money. Did you hear about the college softball pitcher that went from Stanford to, I think, Texas Tech?
Yeah. I did hear that story with the Texas Tech upset. Yeah.
$1 million is essentially what she got for changing schools. Now, that was unthinkable 5 years ago, and that's where we are right now. Now, again, this is through the name and likeness stuff. And if you're dealing with that as a college, it becomes, look, college football is always going to be the cash cow. They're always going to hold on to it. I think college basketball is right there behind it. So those big schools in particular are going to want to hold on to that. That's why you're seeing the super conference thing and all this weird stuff happening in college sports.
Yeah.
College soccer, because it's not on that level in terms of a revenue sport, just let it go. Like you still maybe want your name on the team, but let it go. Let it go off and do its own thing. And maybe if U.S. Soccer has a proposal that works for everybody, then U.S. Soccer can oversee it. The players can still play. They can still go to school. Obviously, you're I don't know how the scholarship function works at that point, but there is something that. So they're talking about U.S. Soccer in their proposal. here's, this is what's happening in American soccer. All these great things are happening. Changes are coming. The World Cup is coming. The Olympics are coming, et cetera, et cetera. College soccer and U.S. soccer overview. A pilot proposal for D1 men's soccer that spans 2 semesters and culminates with a U.S. soccer college playoff. They are specifically outlining a longer regular season, fall and spring. It says divisions to be determined by geography. This would break up the traditional conferences, which college has some conferences that don't follow what you think of for basketball and football, right, Rob? And this is sort of like how college hockey operates. Like Boston College is not in the same conference for hockey that they're in for football.
Correct.
So maybe that's something. I think I like that. It feels right.
So it's to be geographically limited. Yeah, it's pretty harsh. I mean, if you really want these to be student athletes, I went to Western Michigan and there was some basketball players and volleyball players that were in some of my classes, and we literally never saw them the entire time because they were jetting off to various parts of the country. And that wasn't even like, the biggest of big time programs that we're talking about. So having geographic restrictions makes sense, just like what we talk about at the club game, just to reduce the amount of travel time and the wear and tear on people and the expense to the teams traveling. That makes complete sense. But it says on one of the bullet points, putting student athletes first, benefits of athlete health and development by limiting travel. And there you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you do think of this as, if we're doing this, what is the word? Scholar athlete. Is that what they call them? That's what they were for a while. I don't know if we're still doing that. But if that's the thing, like, there's sort of a world in which you imagine maybe college soccer breaks off and it's completely separate. But then again, why are the kids even joining the teams if they're not getting the college experience and other things like that? So if you still want that, and we are a country that centers, although I know this is a moment where going to college is now more up in the air than ever before. But if we are talking about college still being the end game for a lot of parents who maybe don't want to send their kids off, as you said, to an academy and be professionalized at 14, 15, 16, then this is a way to still get these kids an opportunity to play in a system that benefits them while they're playing better soccer. And I don't want to be just selfish, Rob. This isn't just about making better soccer players, but that isn't not part of it as well.
No, it's not at all. And it's one of the major kind of roadblocks and complications that we have if we do want to streamline it and make American soccer, if the goal is to make it look like other places, streamlining one of the major development sectors of our game would make complete sense to me, and having it somewhat reflect a development type of a schedule. I don't think anyone's saying that the current college system is the height of player development.
Just want to mention Alex is going off over here, gifting 10 morning Kickaround memberships.
What does that mean? Is that 10 times $3.99?
Well, I guess it is. We're gonna have to figure out what to do with those gifts and how we can make them work for everybody here. So going back to this, one of the things that they're outlining here is that no matter how many teams participate in their model, they can scale it up. They can break it into regions. They can break it in. They even got the conferences mentioned here. And then if more conferences jump on board, they figure out the regions, they figure out the geography of this, and they play a regular season, split season, and then going to playoffs, which looks like May. Which right now the College Cup is in December, I believe. It'd be a lot
they're
better.
Always fighting off snow in those. Like the semifinals that are still more regionalized, they play in snow.
Be a lot
the
better.
Biggest games of the year.
In May, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. We only got a couple of slides left. I think there's only 2 more left. So this is an example of governance considerations that they can solve together. Basically saying, hey, we don't want to just impose ourselves here. We want to make sure that we're working with the way college sports already works. It talks about redshirt rules, transfer eligibility, things like that, player registration. So players would be registered under FIFA with this proposal. And there would be, look at that, FIFA solidarity payments, potential to unlock a player transfer fee percentage distributed to college programs. So if you play at Wake Forest, you become a professional and you're sold by the club you join to a big European side, some of that money will go back to Wake Forest, which the fact that not that long ago we were arguing about whether American soccer needed to fall in line with solidarity payments. There were lawsuits about this. This is stunning to me that we're at this point.
No, but at the same time, they're willing to propose solidarity payments to college institutions that already have a ton of money. But when we were talking about it for small grassroots clubs accepting solidarity payments, that seemed like a no-go, right? I mean, the story I put into the chat before the show was Queven Keller, the backup for Liverpool. His small Northern Irish club is going to, because he got a 20% sell on for his like $12 million move to Brentford. And so that the fortunes of that youth team have completely changed due to the solidarity payments to that grassroots team.
Well, that's a sell-on is different from solidarity payments. Solidarity payments are due whether you have a sell-on or not. But if you have a sell-on clause, it's obviously extra. But in the case of these colleges, again, it wouldn't be we're negotiating a deal to sell a player, because when you graduate college and you move on and become a professional, that school doesn't get anything for that move. But this idea of you helped train this player, and FIFA has guidelines that says if you help train a player, regardless, you're a small Northern Irish club or you're a college university program, you should get something for that. And that could be interesting. Now, rules are also a part of this. When they talk about coaching and staff education, they talk about field and stadium requirements. And I don't know how college soccer, where they fall into that spectrum. I know sometimes we play games in places that don't actually fit FIFA standards. And substitution rules. This would be a dramatic shift in the history of college soccer, Rob, if suddenly the rules of the game followed the way FIFA requires games to be played.
I know a lot of eye rolling happens with the countdown of the clock, but it is kind of fire to see a goal go, like a true buzzer beater in a soccer game is kind of exciting. But the substitutions, I would say, was the bigger part of it. We're saying, or the classical thinking is that this is developing for the future. But if you're about 22, if you play 4 years college soccer, played 4 years, and you're doing rolling substitutions still,
yeah,
I don't think you're really prepared to be, play a 90 as a professional.
Right. And you do. Okay. There is also another impact and knock on effect that we can come to. But okay. So this is the last slide. Solutions for current operational challenge. And by the way, very much shout out to Chris Kessel for posting this so we could do this today. I want to make sure that we recognize him. If you want to follow him on X, his name is there. Physical infrastructure, limited fields for matches and practices, especially when expanded. And then they say U.S. soccer can help fill that gap. If there's a lack of fields for college teams to play that fit the standards, that U.S. soccer can help with alternative fields. That's interesting in a country where field time is often a problem. The referee pool. Hey, we can help supply referees because there's going to be more games, two seasons, all these things. We can do that as well. That would be incredible. Administrative staff support, admin, medical, all of that. U.S. soccer has the infrastructure to help deal with that. And then cost and investments in profitable things like fundraising efforts, sponsorship opportunities. You saw the sponsors that they mentioned or the things that are coming up that they mentioned. All of that can be part of this. I guess, Rob, the other thing I would ask as we get ready to wrap this up is, do you think this has a significant impact on short season summer soccer in this country?
Oh, you'd have to believe so, especially if it's widespread. I mean, maybe if it's just like the ACC and the Big Ten or something, maybe it'll be more limited. But I think if all colleges adopts this, I would definitely think so. I think that while I love the local scene and the way it plays out, I don't think that hopping and having to be recruited for an additional team that you play for a couple seasons or a couple months a year. I don't necessarily think that that's like, and then go under different coaching and all that sort of different thing. And I don't know if that's like the most efficient or practical use of everyone's time is to find a secondary team. But I mean, if those two can marry somehow, I mean, if it's a spring and a summer, I mean, maybe they'll fit it in the middle, but there's already a limited window before they have to go back anyway. So it's not going to help it. That's for sure.
We've seen, so U.S. soccer changed the schedule for the U.S. Open Cup. And I'll mention that as part of this too, because people are saying, hey, now these college teams can participate in the Open Cup. It expands the Open Cup field dramatically. It would be incredible. And think about the games and the facilities that would be available to the Open Cup, and sort of those early rounds with college teams playing, and an opportunity for a college team to play a pro team. Which is really what you get when you get NPSL teams against pro teams. But we don't think of it that way. If it's a literal college program, like UC Santa Barbara gets to play the LA Galaxy or something. I mean, that's dream scenario stuff. but you can get there, right? Your brain can go to that place. But with the US Open Cup being moved earlier in the season or earlier in the calendar, that hurt those teams that were qualified and would use college players, because those college players weren't ready, weren't released yet to be eligible to play for those teams that had qualified, those amateur teams that had qualified. If this is the way of the world, and if college teams are participating in the Open Cup, then man, I don't know what the, like, how does that do you stay with your college team all the way through the Open Cup season into the like, if your team makes a deep run and you're playing through the summer now, but again, NCAA restrictions on playing time, on practice time, would have to be they'd have to go away. US Soccer would have to negotiate that those restrictions are out the window. And again, where is the NCAA in all of this? Like, how firm is their hand in all of this?
I think we're seeing one of the biggest fall offs of an athletic entity of all time with NCAA. I mean, they like everything's fallen out of their grasp on the football side. I mean, SEC is already thinking about, stepping away. You mentioned like the football super conference stuff, and then the NIL went against like everything they had kind of proposed. They were for decades and decades. So I think NCAA doesn't have much of a leg to stand on. And so I do want to, before we get on to something else, I do want to fact check myself. Cleveland Kelleher, Republic of Ireland, not Northern Irish.
Oh yeah, you were about to start a war, a sectarian war or something with that. You gotta be careful.
Yeah, so small detail, but a huge detail on its same right. So I wanted to be on record of correcting myself there.
Yeah. So, and again, like this is the way of it, right? Just we're playing this out a bit in our heads. And this is only one small part of this, right? Because it's much more about the structures and how U.S. Soccer can impact the college game and the split schedule and the playoffs and elevating the college game. But as we get crispy, dewy 44 saying that if you play for a college team in the Open Cup, let's say a college team is in the Open Cup, you can't then switch and go play for an NPSL team. You'd be cup tied. Although not every college team would be in the Open Cup. There'd be qualifiers. But then when do you play those There's some stuff here. There's some stuff here.
Those are fun problems to think through there. But interesting that the USSF has actually. Do you think that they should have already been involved in college soccer? I mean, does this seem like long overdue?
It seems, yes. I would say yes to that. Except again, we have our sporting traditions and they're very delineated and they're very separate from each other, right? And then we don't, again, because the way college sports developed in this country, and it's unlike no other place in the world. I think maybe Australia might have something similar, but no other place in the world has turned colleges into sports teams the way that we have, and do this sort of, you're representing your school, and we have this whole array of sports that you can play for your college and all of that. So to have, and again, the idea of sort of amateur scholastic sports meant that you needed a separate body. I guess, I don't know. Yes, but I don't know how it could have happened, Rob. Like, that's the thing. I don't know how it could have happened until we got to this point, until a judge said, basically, these players need to make the money because you're making money off them and it's not right. Until that happened, it felt like it probably couldn't have been U.S. Soccer getting involved.
We shall see what happens. Hopefully it all works out for the betterment of it all, but gotta acknowledge what's going on in the chat. Another 10 memberships gifted by our new hero of the program, Alex Murch, donating 20 memberships, getting his own and gifting us a sticker. So Alex Murch, MK Ultra of the day, times a big
week
number there.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible. The month, I think, Alex. That's great. Yeah, we appreciate that so much. And everybody who's a member now because of Alex, I will post the Discord so everybody can jump in and be part of that community. So be on the lookout on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and if anyone, I don't know, so with the second group of 10, the little bar that shows the gifts, looks like there's still some unclaimed ones. I'm not 100% sure if those are claimable after that. So if there's anyone watching right now that hasn't already accepted that gift of a membership, I'd gobble that up here in the next few moments. And if you're watching this and you haven't hit subscribe yet, now is as good a time as any. The MK Ultra group is expanding and took a big jump today, thanks to everyone in here, and especially Alex. Hero status achieved. What is the hierarchy of MK Ultra? We'll have to figure that out here.
Yeah, somebody said capo, chat capo. That's from Tyler. But if we're talking about an ultra situation, yeah, I don't know what is the hierarchy usually in an ultras group. I mean, whoever's leading the charge, whoever's out there singing the songs in the curva, whatever. That's what we got.
Yeah, who leads those Italian ultras when they like scream at the players after a bad performance? That guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whoever that is. That's who I would say.
The team shamer and screamer. But thank you, Alex. Amazing. Great stuff here. And like I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, do so now. And if you haven't become a member, there are a few up for grabs still. Grab them while you can. You can get access to the Discord. That's huge. Priority commenting, early access to videos. We've got a few from Monday yet to release, so maybe we'll make those early access videos as well as some of the ones from previous in the week. Find us on social media at Kickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Also, take us on the road as a podcast, Morning Kickaround, on your favorite podcast platform, including Spotify, which has us, our faces on there as well. So until Friday, what is it? Today's Wednesday, so the next show is Friday. So everybody, until then, enjoy your soccer.